to be done, and I'm still paying her salary. I'm gonna tell you one more story, then I'm gonna take your questions, because I know you've got a lot of questions to ask me about how do you. Success is really a matter of perception. It's a matter of how you perceive yourself. It's not always, people go through your resume and so forth. I keep my bio short and sweet. I'm a kid I grew up in a neighborhood like Overtown. My mother was an educator. My dad was murdered when I was 15 years old, 20 minutes after he dropped me. But he was an entrepreneur. My grandfathers were entrepreneurs, so I understood that. The third young lady is a young lady by the name of Roane. This is, I think, leading into where I think you are. So by then, I've done all these events, still thinking, okay, I don't need anybody else on my team. I can manage all this myself. One day my accountant told me, she says, you're penny rich and you're dollar poor. You're penny rich and you're dollar poor. Because you're doing too many things that you should not be doing. You're writing contracts, you're calling every sponsor, you're doing it all. Your job is to oversee it all, but not do it all. So Aunt Rita was at FIU. She came in for an interview, and it was horrible. It was horrible. She didn't know who Alonzo Mourning was. She didn't know anything about Jazz in the Gardens. All she knew was, based on my website, he does some cool stuff. I want to do cool stuff. Everybody wants to do cool stuff. Everybody wants to hang out with celebrities. So I said, Emery, I've got 2 more people to interview, and I'll give you a call. When she left, an hour later, she called me back. She said, Mr. Roane, I did a terrible job in my interview. After you interview those 2 people, can I come back again? I said, okay. So I tell you what, before I interview the other 2 people, why don't you set an appointment with me next week? And we'll see what happens. Well, the next week she came back. And when she came back again, she was ready. And when I said she was ready, she had not only researched the projects we've done, she had gone through, researched the sponsors, but then she saw additional opportunities of where we could be even more successful. So, like Rudy, every day she came in, she had a notepad. But on her notepad, she asked me, how could she develop a certain skill set? Help me understand sponsorship, help me understand television contracts, help me understand radio. So therefore, when these people call you, they don't have to talk to you sign the contract. Ultimately, I lost Henrietta too. As a matter of fact, I think I want to say a month ago. And here's the irony of it. This was a learning for me. I said, Henrietta, you don't have to come in the office every day. We can communicate via Zoom, Skype, Teams, all of these platforms we have. What really made her leave was she wanted more personal interaction with me. And then when she left, COVID hit. So when COVID hit, she was already skilled in how to communicate on these various platforms. A month ago, she received a new job. She is now the managing director of a worldwide multi-billion-dollar firm based out of San Francisco, and I gave her a recommendation. The lady said, what would you recommend? I said, if I could afford her, you would get her. She said, I already made the decision to hire her. So I get asked a lot to speak in conferences and so forth, generally about raising money, being an entrepreneur. This is the first time somebody's asked me, what is it about building a team? And so I have a lot of friends who are professional athletes. I played basketball in college. We tend to forget there's a coach and then there's a team. How many basketball fans are in here? look at the Heat. There's a culture that's part of building the team. You know, when I got here, I'm proud to say I was the good luck charm in 2006 when we won the first world championship because I came from South Florida. I tell Zoe, Shaq, D-Wade that all the time. These you guys won, I can't. But Pat Riley created that culture. Charles Oakley is a good friend of mine. We grew up and played basketball in college against one another. Pat Riley was his coach in New York. But you look at the Heat now. Alonzo and the administrative role now, they've been consistent in creating a culture that puts the team first. And it's hard, especially if you're the CEO, you're the one writing the checks and so forth, to keep that. You know, a lot of times your ego, and we all have egos. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way. Because if you didn't have an ego, you would not have the fortitude necessary to go out and create a company on your own. When I went to Jazz in the Gardens, I get emotional about this, but I had left Alonzo. You know, I'd known Alonzo since he was in 11th grade. And I was like, dude, I gotta go make some paper. You know, he was like, what about the kids in Overtown? I said, well, what about my neighbor kids? You know? Nonprofit work is not for the money. It's for the vision. And I felt like I invested in the vision, but now, you know, these kids are ready to go to college, bro. I gotta do something. So, you know, we were not on good terms. He's one of my closest friends. We were not on good terms. And I mentioned before I got sick. This is the phase of doing it all on your own. I was in my garage. I used to write all my sponsorship packages in my garage. I had a ceiling fan in there, but no air conditioning. I kept a thermometer in there. Got up to 100 degrees. I would work at 1 hour intervals and then get out of there. Before they hired me for Jazz in the Gardens, I had $52.10 in my business account. I was broke. And I'm still paying $1,200 a month COBRA to make sure my kids had health insurance. Those are things when you have young kids that are extremely vital. So, young lady who dated my roommate from college, this shows you how crazy, this is the lesson in serendipity. The young lady who dated my roommate from college, remember I went to college in Richmond, Virginia, but my roommate was an optometrist here. She called me up, she said, we have a project and I need your help. So I said, what is it? She said, we have this music festival called Jazz in the Gardens, and we've watched you work, can you help us? Sure. I said, but I just had surgery. Can't sit up long. This is going to be quick. So I walk into a room, 5 women of color. The mayor, Shirley Gibson, deputy city manager, Renee Crichton, city attorney, Sonny Dickinson, assistant city manager, Anita Nelson, the young lady who brought me on board, Eula Zucker Williams. So, and building a team. Now, it's just me at that point. I still hadn't built the team. They offered me $1,000 a month to help them build Jazz in the Gardens. How much money did I say I had in my account? Do I need this money? Do I have a skill set and a talent? See, $1,000 a month, I go stock shares in Walmart and so forth. Mind you, I'm still hurting from the surgery. I got 5 beautiful queens in front of me, empowered. I bowed my head. God told me, we ain't doing it for $1,000. I looked at those ladies and I thanked them. I said, thank you. And by then, Mary Gibson had walked out the road. Good luck on your project. I ain't got no money now. $52.10. I leave and I'm driving past Marlin Stadium as it's being built. That's how serendipity happened. So it's Mayor Gibson. She apologizes. She says, and you'll find that I'm candid when I tell my story. She says, young man, I'm sorry these ladies bust your balls, but those were her exact words. She said, but I have to teach them, because this goes back to team building. I have to teach them when you see people with a talent to respect their talent. Because none of you can do what he does. That's why he is in the room. She said, young man, I'm going to give you what you asked for, but I need you to raise 25% more than what we got right now. You promise me that you will do that. I said, yeah. Now, you're saying, how could I make that promise to her? Well, when I walked in, I had already expected I had a job. I just didn't know they were offering me $1,000 and I was going to have to walk out of there without the job. So, I said, yeah. The first year, I did 50% of what she asked. This year, we raised $1.2 million in cash for Jazz in the Garden. So, yeah. But it was a team. It wasn't just me. It was people that I had built relationships with over the years who watched what I was doing and came on board. One of my close friends' wife has been at Disney for 20 years. Close friend. Every year I would ask them, hey, don't you think you all should be part of Jazz in the Gardens? This year, they became a part of Jazz in the Gardens. So, I'm gonna, we got 20 minutes left, I think. I'm gonna open it up now for you all to ask me questions about team building. Really, I'm an open book. You can ask me questions about anything, you know. So, your name?
Yes, hi Melvin. My name is Alex Ann. My background is corporate communications.
Okay.
And I'm looking to inspire an entrepreneur to work on projects that I actually care about, which is Black culture. So I have two quick questions. My first question is, could you go into a little bit more details about like your pain points in your business, like times that you felt like you were frustrated and you asked God, like, Lord, I need your help right now. I feel like giving up, and how you were able to get out of that situation?
Well, I'm still going through pain points. So, as an example, Dr. Gaines, she's my business partner, she's my best friend, but she is also one of the best educators and dentists in South Florida. So she asked me, she's like, you know, my dream is to create a medical apparel line primarily directed towards women and people of color. We're just built differently. So, pain point. I don't know nothing about no scrubs. Don't know anything about manufacturing. What's the price point? Who to start? Type of material. I don't know anything about her vision other than me sitting there listening to it. Part of what you're talking about is understanding, is hearing yourself and writing it out. I spend a lot of time with myself. I know that sounds kind of like an oxymoron, but a lot of times when we're by ourselves, do you take notes? Do you journal? Do you write what your fears are? And if you write what your fears are, do you go research why you fear these things? You know, a lot of times we fear because the overarching one is money. Every one of us as an entrepreneur, when you're starting out, right? And that's why I tell people the story about the fixed $2.10. It's like, how am I going to get to this point? So, fast forward into serendipity. Michelle Adderley became one of my business partners. That was the young lady I told you I met at Sheba's. That was her expertise. So as time went on, we started talking about how do you develop personal credit and your business credit. So once I was able to stop worrying about how the bills were going to get paid, I could focus on the creative part of what I'm trying to do. A lot of times I think we have to go back and write down what our dream and our vision is for our company to remind ourselves, why are we doing what we're doing? You know, like Dr. Gaines, hey man, we gonna do this. I have stories. A friend of mine, I'm gonna tell you about this and then come back. A friend of mine was dating a young lady who her background and expertise was building brands, clothing brands. She had worked with Nietzsche, Sean John. So immediately it was like, okay, Dr. Gaines back there. Ask Charlie. She said, we gotta pay Charlie. Yes, we do. But now we have, again, building that team of folks who can help take the dream to the next level. So I'm learning so much about how your clothes are made and where they come from and how they end up in the country and how they go through the inspection, and it's amazing. So, yes, sir.
As the leader of your team, how do you deal with conflicts? or not even that. How do you deal with different egos when it comes to the position that you hold versus the position that everybody else in the company holds?
I get that question often.
Bill, could you repeat this question?
Huh?
Could you repeat this question?
Oh, I'm sorry. He wanted to know, how do you deal with conflict and egos? I'm going to tell you a very interesting story. I have never hired another male to work with me. Never. Rudy and them, all those folks work with me in the confines of running Alonzo Morning Chairs. But as far as Roane Consulting Group, I've never hired another male. And I attempted to do it this year. Guy calls me up, sends me his resume, it's impeccable. I say, hey, I'll take you out to dinner. I take him out to dinner. We sit there, I look at him in the eye, I say, and this is how I operate. We're all equal. I sign the checks, we're all equal. But the women that work for me are demanding. They're not going to accept anything less than your very best. Now, to answer that question about the ego component, one of the things that I try to do is create an environment that's very holistic. You know, I really try to get away. I've worked in corporate America. I worked for a consultant as USA Today, 7-Eleven, Metropolitan Life. I try to get away from those, and that's why they want to use the PowerPoint. Those that find if A doesn't work, we do B. If C doesn't work, we do this. I try to really engage my employees where I learn about who they are. What are their weaknesses? What are their fears? What are their dreams? What are their thoughts and desires? So it really has not worked out where there's been another man or male that's come to the table that says, because you know how we are as guys. I mean,
It works both ways.
huh?
Women are the same way too, man.
No, trust me. Look, Michelle, let me tell you, I got some women, they got their egos too. But I always emphasize every day, you can't check the ego at the table, we all can fail. And before I let all of us fail, I will fire you. See, most people will let a problem continue before they take action. You know? Before I let you destroy what I've worked my entire life to build, somebody got to go. And guess who ain't going? Me. You know, and I'm going to use Dr. Gaines and Michelle because they're back there. But Dr. Gaines had come to me, she was like, I really didn't want to say anything to you about this, but you know, I need to bring this to your attention. I said, you don't have to preface it. We own this company together. And that's the thing people fail to remember is that just because you own the company doesn't make you always right. You gotta check your ego sometimes. You know, we all got an ego, trust me, I've said that before. Young lady in back, you have a question?
Thank you. So, can you hear me?
No, but I'll come
Okay.
back there.
I can project.
You can project?
I can
Okay.
project. Thank you so much for your comments on team building. I'm an entrepreneur, been an entrepreneur for a little over 10 years.
Okay.
And building a team is incredibly difficult, and we don't talk enough about it. So thank you for the insight. Now, my question to you is, I am pursuing a new venture, and I have no corporate sponsorship experience, and we need a corporate sponsor. So the question is, if you are new to engaging a corporate sponsor, where do you start? Outside of research.
Well, did you all hear a question?
Yes.
Let me tell you. A lot of people ask me, what do I owe to success? It's relationships. I don't care what you put in that corporate sponsorship debt, if you don't have a relationship, they're not gonna look at it. Real talk. I get a lot of people. I get people that offer little money. I get people offer a lot of money. They bring their projects, and I say, well, what was successful before? And trust me, some of these folks are well-known people, so they think just because their name is on a particular project, that a corporation should want to be a part of it. Here's a classic example, right where we are now, Overtown Youth Center. Who would not want to support the Overtown Youth Center? You'd be surprised. Just because the Youth Center has a very utopian goal of changing the lives of kids in disadvantaged communities, there are other organizations out there that do the same thing. But the person sitting across the table might be a friend of a friend. That's how doors open. So you can learn and research how to do corporate sponsorship, but the real gold mine of what you do is your Rolodex and your relationships, and how do you build those relationships, how do you nurture those relationships. But here's the other part: how do you keep those relationships when you mess up? And sometimes we mess up, you know. Jazz in the Gardens, as good as it is, as successful as it has been, is not perfect. You know, one of the arguments I hear every year is that the Porta Johns. Well, we have, now see, this is a learning lesson here. I said Porta Johns, and my friend there, he shut his shoulders. Until you have an event that's 65% women, you don't understand how Porta Johns made you do anything bad that day. Trust me. That's why. So I worked at handle marketing for Richmond Coliseum. We were renovating the Coliseum, multi-million-dollar project. And I was the director of marketing, and they asked me, what is your primary focus here? I said, more women restrooms. He said, what? I said, more women restrooms. And at that time, we had Disney on Ice, Ringling Brothers, Barnum Bailey Circus. You got all of these events, and you have women. But you see those lines coming out of the restroom? Well, that starts to develop a reputation that, man, I mean, they got Shaka Khan there, Floetry, but bathrooms, you gotta wait an hour. A woman waiting for a restroom, not like us. I'm just being honest. I know you think that this is a little thing, but that's a big thing in the buying decisions for women, especially with kids. So to answer your question, yeah, you can research corporate sponsorship, but you're gonna have to look at your Rolodex of who can help you and who really, here's the other part about the who can help you. Do they really have the relationships to help you? And what do they want out of it?
I have one more. I have one more question.
Okay.
Thank you, that validates some questions I had.
Okay.
Yes, to the women's restrooms.
I was there. I appreciate that. And the last question is, are you considering publishing your experiences?
Well, I'm a son of an educator. Dr. Gaines will tell you that fortunately now, I lost my mother and my grandmother to Alzheimer's and dementia. I was caregivers to both. And so she's been encouraging me to write these stories because it's these stories like this, even when I was a kid, that really shaped who I was, how I deal with people. Probably part of the reason why I work so well with women is because my mother raised me. I'm the oldest of 3, so, my mother was tough. She was an educator. She was like, if you're not going to do it, don't do it. I'm from the generation that got beat. Real talk. My mother was 5'2", and she could swing that thing, boy. Then, the taller I got, the harder she swung. I've been hit with it all. But when she needed me, it was my honor and my privilege to be her caregiver, so twice a child, once an adult. I want to take everybody's questions because I saw another hand. There you go, young man.
So, in regards to what you were saying about networking and building relationships, I've been often told that in order for you to establish, a relationship business-wise, you kind of have to offer value. So for the fellow entrepreneurs here who have issues with creating value, for contra to asking for a handout, if you were seeking to build a relationship with someone, what would your advice be?
I'm going to disagree with that. You as a person is valuable. I went out to a restaurant, Smitty's in Fort Lauderdale. I was just eating wings, watching the game, minding my business. And the young man that served me was so incredible that I took his information. He was offering a service, I was paying for it, I wasn't there eating free, But his energy was so infectious to me that I had to ask him. I said, what do you do? He was in school. What was his name? Jalen? His name was Jalen. I said, Jalen, can I take a picture with you? He said, sure. Now, on Facebook, I think I have 4,500 followers. I took a picture with him and I wrote a story about it. I mean, a long story. Because I was just so impressed. One, African American men, we tend to get, especially now. So I talk real to folks. So if anybody want to leave, then y'all want to leave out. But this was a young man chasing his dream. So he told me the story of how he got the job. This is why I had to write a story about it. He filled out an application for the job, but they mixed up the phone number. They called him thinking it was somebody else. He showed up for the job interview and got the job. He was a teenager. He got the job, and then when I posted it, half of the people that followed me knew him. So he reminded me of myself of just chasing a dream, but all he was doing was being himself. That was the value. Michelle and Dr. Gaines laugh because a lot of times we go out to eat or we just walk around. I guess, the height thing, Hey, you look like a basketball player, we're gonna talk to him. And invariably, when people find out I own my own company, well, what do? I tell them what I do. Well, I'd like to talk to you some more. Here's my card, would you call me? So every opportunity you meet somebody, you don't go in there with the perception of, I want to talk to you, make you my friend. Because some people you're gonna find out you don't like them. You don't want them as your friend. You want to get as far away from them as quickly as possible. but every interaction that you have is an opportunity to build your brand. So another hand somewhere? Yes?
So I know you can't mentor everyone. You gotta get close to you and learn from you. So what are some, advice that you give people that you can't take everyone under your wing?
It's interesting you asked me about that because, believe it or not, I'm 58 years old. I've given myself 10 years to do what I do. I have 2 young kids, and so I've been mentoring them. I've been taking a lot of lessons on the business side that Michelle's taught me about building your business. And a lot of times people don't understand that. So let's back up to the basics. In building your business, who has an LLC here? S corps. Who has sold and don't? I'm not picking on anybody, but if you're still operating your business as sole proprietor, you need to change that ASAP. If you have an LLC, an S corp, you'd be building your business credit, and then building up to the point where you have a holding company that holds your company. These are things I'm learning now. Once you start doing that and build your business credit, and then minimize your exposure on the personal side, then you can do amazing things. And that's what I'm doing with my kids now. You know, my kids are 26 and 23. They are both at the stage where they want to listen, but they don't want to listen. You know, so I have to give it to them in little doses. As far as mentorship is, you can follow me on social media. A lot of times I do write little anecdotal information about just my experiences in corporate America, people chasing dreams. I write a lot. You know, when I was a little kid, believe it or not, they're gonna laugh because I had a squeaky voice when I was a little kid. And I was a star quarterback. I mean, when I say squeaky, it was ready, defensive team was laughing. So when I turned 14 or 15, my mother made me start entering oratorical contests. And my voice started changing. So, you know, guys can relate to this. When your voice started changing, you start answering the phone, I was like, hello. Is your dad home? Yeah, hold on, I'll get it for you. And so, find things, this is one of the things I tell people when I mentor. Chase your passion, but also find something that takes you away from the pressures of what we do. There's a lot of pressure sometimes being an entrepreneur. One of the things that I was focused on, like I said, I created a company with Will Down and Mike Phillips, and then I'm gonna be quiet, Michelle. I know she's somewhere around. But that company was created out of COVID, guys. We were meeting every Thursday at 2 o'clock on a Zoom call, just, brother, you good? You good? You good? And one day Will down and said, look here, man, I ain't got a damn place to go, but if we gonna meet every Thursday at 2, we need to build something. And that became that. And so one of the things we did was a segment called Improvisation Conversation, and we focused on mental health. And little did we know that in the midst of COVID, how many people were really struggling mentally. More importantly, we didn't realize how much we were struggling mentally. You know, because events were our livelihood. Ad agencies, they were performers, all of a sudden, ain't go nowhere. I set up a tent in my patio and sit out there every night, listen to D Nice, and drinking Stellas, smoking cigars. I ain't got a damn thing to do. But we created that company. So I always say to people, in particular when I talk to young folks, is find something that you like doing, whether it's writing poetry. I wrote poetry when I was little. I haven't written poetry in so many years. I need to do it again. Regardless of what you see as your spiritual base, have a base, have a connection to a higher being, whether you're Catholic, Buddhist, Islamic. We all have to get grounded. that's the number one thing that I tell people as far as mentorship. The other thing is chase your passion. Don't chase money. I've never chased money. And I've been able to travel the world and do things that I never, as I always say, a poor boy from Richmond, Virginia and Church Hill. I look around this room and those little offices were the size of my bedroom when I was growing up, and there were 4 of us. We put the bunk beds in. You know, my cousin and I had the top bunks, and then my sister and brother had bottom bunks, and they would hang sheets down just to make it seem like another bedroom, you know. But those were the lessons that made us dream. You know, at the end, I always tell people after I speak is never lose sight of your dreams. You know, they can be frustrating. And last but not least, and I'll close on this, Michelle, if you don't put the work in, don't expect the reward.
That's right.
A lot of people walking around flashing business cards and, hey man, I'm such and such. But Michelle, I'm going to tell you, I invest in my craft. You know, doesn't mean that I know it all. You know, Michelle and I know we've had interactions for years now. And she said, would you speak to my conference? And I was like, it's a golf day. Be on the golf course. That's one of my passions. I hustle people on the golf course. Real talk. No, real talk. Any of y'all play golf? What's your handicap? See, you understand.
Go for fun.
Go for fun. Yeah. Let me tell you, golf ain't just for fun. It's where I've built some of my biggest relationships.
Yep.
And I'll close on this one. This says 23. Ray's line number is 23. We always said in 2023, this medical apparel company that we're building is going to just take off. We Are One is going to take off. You know, we've given it a goal. You know, sometimes you give a goal to deadline. This is from MJ's course. It's Grove 23. And had an opportunity to go there and play there a couple of times, and I just looked at people who have what we call stupid money.
Yep.
I mean, the money there is crazy. But you know, I left that place, you know, Maseratis, Ferraris, I know MJ, billionaires, and at the end of the day, I said, you just gotta find your own lane for what makes you happy. Because MJ, I can leave out here, Michelle's trying to go to Jackson's or somewhere to eat. I can walk and most people won't recognize me. Every now and again it does happen. MJ is a billionaire, but he can't do that. Can't enjoy the simple things in life of spending time with folks like you. Somebody tell somebody MJ is here right now, he can't get out of this building. So I thank you all for this time. I thank you for this opportunity. I know you probably wanted a PowerPoint. I got PowerPoints for days, but I think when you're real with people and just tell them, hey, just do what you're doing, play more golf. I've met some of my best relationships on the golf course. I produce golf events too. But thank you.